Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by John Deere. I've got Greg Machinery Pete Peterson on here to talk about what's happening in the world of auctions. Greg, how you doing this morning?
Doing pretty well, Casey. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Well, I think if you take a look around here, we're starting to see some build up. I think you start looking at some of the auction portfolio there. There's starting to see a little more stuff pop up. Nothing too crazy yet, which you wouldn't expect to see this time of the year. But we are going into that. I've always talked about the lull between spring harvest and fall harvest, which is basically July and August, maybe sometime into September. You might see a few pop up in there, but that's typically when we start seeing a lot more auctions get booked for post-harvest auction activity in that October through December timeframe. And I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about if I'm going to have an auction. I'm thinking about doing that. How do you go about picking the auctioneer that you want to use? How do you go about kind of looking at what machinery you're going to put where? And then second and third, what are some of the expectations you should have for that sale when it comes through? So I guess from my perspective, when I was working for the dealership, I always tried to I did a lot of research on the auctioneer that I wanted to use. And I wanted to make sure that auctioneer that I was using had a solid track record of obviously success, right? You wanted to find the guy that was going to give you the golden beans, right? Or the magic beans, so you could plant them outside and go out and get the golden goose, right? But I think what I always tried to look for was how often did I see marketing pieces from that particular auctioneer company, and what was their track record as overall success of sale? Like when I looked at a Lincoln Consignment sale, did I see a pretty steady? Were they typically higher than everybody else? What was that? What was the reason for that draw for that? And then lastly, when I started looking at machinery, I was pretty picky about what machines you put where. Right? Obviously, tractors you can kind of sell all year round, but I didn't want to sell a combine in May, right? I didn't want to sell a planter in May either. I wanted to either sell that before season or going into the next season. So I always try to measure when I was out there. You've been covering auctions for a long, long time. What are some of the things, if you were going to give advice to somebody, what are some things that you would say, hey, these are probably my 2 or 3 things I'd make sure that I'd pay attention to going through this process?
Yeah, really good question, Casey. I get asked that a fair amount by farmers as I travel around. I think, number one, when it comes to the auction company, I think, you're going to have your gut feelings about your, options, which used to be kind of the only place that you had to go off of was your kind of gut, talking to your friends and neighbors as you were comfortable. But of course, now it's a different age. The data and the information about the results, whether it's land auctions or machinery auctions in our world.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I've been smashing for 35 years to put our prices together. And one little interesting thing that sometimes, probably because I haven't talked about it too much, but when you're in machinerypete.com looking at the auction pricing, say you want to, you're checking out whatever Case H 8230 combine. So you punch it up and you'll see, okay, well, here's one auction company XYZ, Oklahoma brought X number of hours and all that. There's a link there where you can click and it pulls up everything that's sold on that sale in descending price order. And the reason we did that is because we always wanted to allow users to get a full picture on that sale event. Obviously, yes, what did the 8230 bring, but then how'd the head sell? How'd the truck sell? So that's
is it an anomaly or not?
Right? Yeah, right. Because there's always every auction has a few things that sell high and a few that sell low. So I think as much context as you can get about the results is important, and then just your own feel as a farmer, based on visibility of auction companies, whether you like social media or not. You got to be where the eyeballs are. So how do auction companies do social media or don't do social media? That's become huge. And I've seen, I think when you have an auction, these days you have to be a little bit willing to kind of step back and maybe get out of your comfort zone a little bit. As folks in ag they're just not soapbox people. They don't like saying, look how good my stuff is. It makes their skin crawl. But there's ways to get around that by just straight, honest, short, like, hey, I'm John Smith. I have a sale 3 weeks from Friday. Or even another big thing now, Casey, is getting the promotion out early. It doesn't have to be just the 2 weeks before the auction. I mean, work with your auction company. So if you're planning that sale, like you talked about, coming in early November, get a couple things out.
Now.
Yeah. If you got a lead tractor that's got 1,200 hours on it, I mean, hey, or your planner. Let's get a little video clip of your planner. So those things are different. Those weren't available before. And I think auction companies have all lifted their games. They have to. It's such a competitive business. If they don't do these things, farmers know and they get left behind. So I would look for those couple things. It used to be pretty prevalent in terms of the timing, as you were touching on earlier, like you said, the kind of the June 1st, late spring, pre or through harvest was kind of like, don't really know you'd want to have your sale then. But honestly, our numbers have showed the last few years it doesn't make any difference anymore. It surprisingly just doesn't. I think the online sales have just completely flipped that. So it just boils down to your equipment. And on that front, again, any way that you can bring to light the care you've given to it, you sit there and you think, well, you got to have a ton of great pictures of it. So you want an auction company, they'll take 80 pictures of your tractor and combine. It sounds dumb, but if you don't do that, you're missing the boat, because the guy 5 states away, when he pulls up that listing, if there's 6 pictures, he's going to go, well, what about that rear tire? And that's that one rear tire is a lot of money. So a zillion pictures. And then, I mean, any of your work history, I think you got to be really upfront with that. And that's where I think video, the market really isn't onto it yet. They'll still say, I spent $18,000 on this thing 2 summers ago with Smith Implement or whatever. And that's cool. But I mean, what I would do is take my cell phone and go to my mechanic at Smith Implement and say, hey, Bob, remember when I brought and just get Bob on there going, oh, yeah. Again, it sounds really dumb, but that stuff is super powerful, because that guy 5 states away, those are the ones you really want to engage, because they'll drive the bidding. They might not get it, but if you can pull 10 guys like that in to bid twice more on 5 of your items, you're going to be pretty happy at the end of your auction.
Yep. So I think that was my next phase of questions were going to be, you start talking about online auctions and what that looks like, and that's another thing now. Right? Used to be live auction with internet bidding. Right? It's internet time itself. Since COVID, everything's been like that. And you're exactly right. When I didn't really pay much attention to the video thing until there was nobody chanting to sell anymore, right? And I think that really drives that, hey, this is why it's important to have somewhat of I don't know, like a portfolio of videos that you can kind of go watch and say, hey, these are the things we did and that's that and the other thing. And it's one thing, like you said, for you to say that, right? But it's another thing to have your mechanic down at the local dealership or whatever come talk about whatever, or the sales guy that says, hey, when these things come in on trade, I've typically sold them in this amount of time because they have a good reputation in the area and blah, blah, blah. Those kind of things really make a big difference when you start looking at how you're going to get those people. Because, like you said, if you're someone 5 states away, you don't know me from Adam, right? So you have no idea what I'm doing. You have any idea what the level of carrying those kind of things I've taken into, what my service history looks like, those kind of things. You don't know the reputation of the equipment. And on the flip side, if you have a reputation of, hey, this guy uses his equipment, whenever somebody says somebody uses their equipment, that's just a nice way of saying they're rough on stuff.
Yes.
So when you hear
Yep.
that come out of someone's mouth, that means that that you have an even a bigger opportunity to tell the story. Like, yeah, I might use my stuff, but I also I know how to use a grease gun too. So this
Right.
is some of the stuff that we
You
do.
know, interesting point you hit on there, Casey, in terms of, you sat in the dealer chair all those years. And I come from a dealer family. My dad was a third generation dealer going back. My great grandfather got in it in 1920. That farmer customer relationship with the dealer, if I'm a dealer and my customer is having his retirement auction or whatever the type of auction might be, now I think maybe we just haven't thought about it too much yet, but I've been covering auctions a lot of years. When Joe's retirement auction, his dealer, his salesperson, or his mechanic will be at the sale just because they've been friends for decades. This is my customer, and the smart auctioneers would give the mic to the salesman or the mechanic and say, "Hey, Bob, tell us about John and his history of care." And I always would be standing there going, "Whoa, that is really smart, high level stuff." But it always felt to me like it just happened because, oh, there's
Yeah,
Bob. I gave him the mic.
yeah,
Well, now if you're a month out from the auction, and it might have to be the farmer driving this, but if I were on the dealer side, I would like volunteer and say, "Hey, Joe, man, hey, congrats! I see your retirement sales coming up in 6 weeks. I want to wish you well. You've been a great customer. If there's anything I can do, well, yes, there's something you can do. Just do a little testimonial and say, hey, this is Frank from Smith Implement, and I tell you what, it's been great working with Casey all these years, and his family, and his dad, Fred, was a great guy, da, da, da." That video reality, it reaches through the screen to that guy 5 states away we're talking about.
yeah,
And it grabs him by the collar and pulls him in. And it's so simple, but nobody's doing it yet. And it costs $0 to do it. And you already have this great relationship with your dealer. But again, part of it's as farmers, God bless them, well, I don't want to impose and I don't want to say how great my stuff is. And it's like, that's beautiful. That makes you who you are, American farmer. But let's back up here. You're having a sale.
yeah.
You farmed your whole life. Obviously, what's the goal? To get maximum dollars out of every piece on your event. That's what the auctioneer wants. That's what you want. Now, how can we go about doing that? Who's thinking outside the box to do some of these things? And if you had a little clip of your dealer, which, by the way, to me, that's just good business for the dealer, because you got farmers from all over the country now watching this dealer talk glowingly about working with this farmer, Bob, who's retiring, and you're just honoring your customer. And so working with that on the front end, I see huge value there. And again, you can't blow smoke if it was well used. What was the term you said?
If they use their equipment.
If they use their equipment, even here though, you know what? I think I would lean into it and say, you know what? If I'm the auction, and I'm seeing a few auctioneers do this, they'll say, you know what? I tell you what, this dozer was well used. But you're being honest, and you're just people will chuckle and I'll go, oh, how rough is that thing? But they'll look, and then if you got 60 pictures of it, they'll look and they'll go, that thing's worth $15,500. Well, maybe I'll go to $17,500. The reason I think they go to $17,500 is because the auctioneer said, man, this thing is, again, honesty and trust. Whether you're a dealer or you're an auctioneer, you cannot put a price tag on that. Now, if you abuse that and you say this thing's immaculate, and it's like farmer gets there and he goes, this thing's not immaculate, this thing's a piece of junk, what's the likelihood of that farmer bidding with that auction company again? Zippo. So that's short-term bad business. That's why you have to be honest with what, and if your farmer calls from 5 states away, calls the auctioneer like, hey, shoot me straight on this thing. That's an opportunity for the auctioneer to say, this thing's kind of a piece of crap. Because, again, the reason to do that is because that guy 5 states away, he's going to tell all his buddies, that auctioneer Casey, man, he's an honest dude. He told me that thing's a piece of crap. And again, I think even though it's a piece of crap, you might still get 2 more bids on it, and it'll sell for more than it maybe should have. So honesty and trust at every turn and every tool, you lean into that. That's what I'd look for if I'm assessing auction companies and thinking about ways to help my sale.
I always kind of looked at that, the old saying is, say whatever I want as long as I say with all due respect to start with, It's kind of like one of those things we hear an auctioneer say in full transparency, right? It
Yes,
might have a few leaks here and there. When they say something like that, you're like, okay, well, he's trying to tell me that it's not the peach that it may seem,
they're
without telling
dancing
me
the
that.
line
That's right.
between trying to get as much as they can,
Yeah,
but trying to be honest for the future of their business. Yes.
yeah, I've heard that. In full transparency, it might have a few leaks, a
Yeah.
time or two. So that tells me, like, okay, so he's telling me that it's
One
what
thing I
you'd
do
expect
like,
for the age.
yes, and I do appreciate auctioneers over the years that I've covered sales, Casey, and they'll when something pops up, or they might have it advertised a certain way, and then might be a situation where the people look at it and go, that's not an '88 model. We know from this or that it's really a '83 model or whatever, or a mechanical issue. At least call it out on sale day. It's like, hey, again, full transparency. We just found this out. Say it before you sell it, because I just think, again, if you step back, if you're the auctioneer and you sell it that way, and people talk. They just,
Sure.
we're humans, we talk. Same for a dealer. If, they talk. So I always just thought, do it the hard way up front. If it's, this thing's got issues. We all got issues. That's it.
Right.
It's life.
Right.
But, yeah, again, just being proactive. Now, on the topic of shiny equipment, I have a good example here of auctioneer being very proactive. So we're recording this. It's May 27th. So this sale is about 3.5 weeks out. It's June 21st. It's in Lime Springs, Iowa. It's an estate sale, Harry Blackburn estate. And I don't know the circumstance on why Harry's equipment had such low hours, but the auctioneer, in this case, Joel Everett, Joel's Tractors and Auctions, is having the sale. Now, they reached out to us a month in advance, and they said, Pete, look at this. And the reason Joel reached out in this case was because this low hours. So he's got a 16 model John Deere 9420R. He's got 122 hours on it, one owner. And he's got an 09 7230 premium, 2-wheel drive. You know how hot a pre-def 2-wheel drive with low hours. It's got 1,076 hours, one owner, Gold Key Tour. That thing will be through the roof. And then an 18 model S760 combine, which I've only seen 32 of those ever sold. And this thing only has 70 engine hours on it. So Joel reached out, hey, Pete, look at this, a month out. Now, not every sale is like that. But even if there's one item on your sale, it's like, wow, look at this thing. The more time you can reach out and get the word out on social media, and believe me, we'll get the word out on this sale. So come join us at the sale, folks. We'll be there filming. So, I'll be real curious to see how that stuff sells.
Yep. And I think the other thing too to talk about when you start looking at sales is the kind of sales that are out there, and to be careful with which one you pick, right? So obviously, if you're having a retirement sale, that's an event within itself, right? And typically, retirement sales are as close to retail price as you can get.
Gold standard.
Typically, they're going to be whatever. If the dealerships are asking, $100,000 for something, and you're selling the same thing at a retirement sale, it's going to be very close to $100,000. The next two down, you have a consignment sale, which is, most auctioneers have a bi-yearly consignment sale, or, consignment sale every so often, this kind of something pops up. And it's just a hodgepodge, pile up of equipment shows up, and you have this, have a sale. And it can be everything from a 1-year-old tractor all the way down to a 35-year-old baler, right? So it's kind of whatever's in the mix there. Then you have I'd put the last mix in there as a dealership consignment or liquidation or something like that you're looking at, where the dealership has decided, hey, we've got too much inventory, we're going to offload some of this stuff and sell it. All three of those bring different prices, right? And if you have one or two pieces of equipment that you want to sell at an auction, it's very if you can get your piece in with a retirement sale and say, hey, we're just selling this for Casey, he's a neighbor down the way. He's just going to put it in this auction here. You're going to do way better than taking it to the local consignment sale and working your way through that. So I think it's important when you're looking at where you're going to buy and where you're going to sell. Those three different types of auctions make a big difference in what you're going to A, buy it for, and B, what you're going to sell it for. So I guess in your experience, Greg, what are you seeing there on that?
Well, you're exactly right, Casey. You wind this back to November 1989 when I started compiling auction prices. And of course, there was no internet, so we had books we published. And we had, of course, the column for the sale price, the hours, the condition. But one of the columns was sale type. And so we would say farm auction, consignment auction, dealer auction. Of course, there were no online auctions back then. But the reason we did that is because we wanted to provide full context. So you could look at that, whatever, John, your 9,500 combine sale in May of 1990 and go, oh, that was on a consignment sale. That's why it was 8% cheaper than a farm retirement auction. So, yeah, I think that's become, that's always been a huge piece of it. One thing I find really interesting now in the online world we live in. So, Purple Wave and Big Iron are both great examples of this.
Yeah.
And really all my auctioneer friends, Albrecht Auction Service up out of Michigan, Miedema Auction, Wheeler Auction down in Paris, Missouri. They're having this huge consignment event or an online auction. But they'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 farmer lines within the sale. Or think of all those years we used to go to Sullivan's down in Hamilton, Illinois, and they'd have the physical on-site sale, but then they'd say, well, no, this is Fred's retirement line. And so finding ways pre-sale and during the sale to call out that, there's 1,500 pieces here today, but there's like 12 that are John's. And then give John the mic and let him talk about his draper head or whatever. So I like how Big Iron and Purple and some of these other folks now are honoring the farm retirements within their huge sales. Yeah. And I think, like you said, if you have 1 or 2 pieces to sell, again, look at auction companies and how they treat those items. Can they pull them forward and give them a little more pop? Like, wow, look at this 8230 from Bill Smith on our consignment sale on Wednesday. And we keep going back to that guy 5 states away, but that's really who you're trying to gauge.
He drives the sale, really. I mean,
absolutely drives the sale. You got to get that guy 5 states away to go, oh, well, this is Bill Smith. Now, I don't know Bill Smith from a freaking hole in the ground, but when you present it that Bill is retiring or this is off the Bill Smith estate, it's just farmers are smart. And they go, oh, their antenna goes up. Okay, I'll lock in on this thing. So whatever as an auctioneer to do to call that out is really smart.
Yeah, you hit on it too. Just a little bit ago what you said, but with the shift to everything online, it has kind of changed how those 3 auctions kind of work within each other. Because like you just talked about, you could have an auction within an auction, and that's going to change the way people look and bid on those things comparatively. So it'll be very cool how we're putting together.
What's really interesting, I think, Casey, is if you look now, all this equipment getting sold and the age of the people selling it and their backgrounds. So I'm 59. So farmers, from my age on up, they've grew up, and you've talked about it, going to the sale with your grandpa when you were a little guy, and that gets in to whatever extent that becomes your end picture. Like when I retire, I'm going to have a sale on my farm. Now, that's changed a lot. Online has proved itself. But, for farmers with 1 or 2 pieces, and if you're younger and maybe under pressure from your lender, oh man, this 2025, man, this is tough. I gotta sell a couple pieces to free up some cash. What I've seen spring up around the country, really smart auctioneers are having like bi-monthly, at least monthly, they'll call them statewide auctions online. It's like Adam Marshall down in Kearney, Nebraska. You probably know Adam. He's a great guy. Dad's in the business for years, legendary. So he has I think it's just a monthly statewide auction. Now he's also pulling, he'll say on the listing, this is Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado. Or if you're my friend Dave Albrecht up with Albrecht Auction out of Vassar, Michigan, they do twice a month. They call it their bi-weekly tri-state auction. So they're pulling stuff from Indiana, Michigan, Ohio. And they're training farmers in those 3 states to go, oh, I can sell with Dave. I got 2 pieces. And they really pull in a lot of buyers from nationwide and up in Canada. So auctioneers have been really smart building into this, I think.
Yeah, it's the online auction side of it's given a lot more versatility to the auction.
Yes.
You don't have to take it anywhere. You can leave it right on your yard. Someone comes to your house, picks it up, those kind of things. So everything it works out. It works out. I think it's working out better than what people anticipate. I thought it was going to in 2006 when
Better than me too, yeah.
About this, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, who could imagine that you could leave, like you said, you could leave your equipment right on in your shed and sell it and have the buyer come to your place. And I think the whole equipment auction space is so much more efficient and just faster than it was, 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's not even close. So we talk a lot about how that affects the whole overall environment if you're a dealer dealing with excess inventory and stuff. But the fact that this whole thing is so much more efficient, it's just faster. I've written about it, but to me, it feels like the farm equipment space is catching up to the used automobile space, where the velocity of the inventory would just, they take it to auction, move it, bang, gone. And so it's been fascinating to watch.
All right, probably a good place to start. Folks want to reach out to you, get you to come speak. Easiest way just to go to machinerypete.com.
Yep, machinerypete.com. Or hey, if you got an auction coming up and you want to see if I can be there, I love coming out YouTube and our TV shows. So yeah, just hit our website, machinerypete.com. Shoot us a note or hit me on Facebook or Twitter, X, whatever. And I'd love to visit with you.
A couple places we're going to be together too. We're going to be up in your hometown, actually, up there in Minnesota, up there talking about what's going on with some equipment stuff. Post crop tour on the Farm Journal crop tour up there. So that'll be interesting to get that together from the Pro Farmer tour up there. So
what's that called? Yield Academy? Is that what Farm Journal?
Yield Academy, yeah. That's the first time I've been part of an academy. So
I don't have much to offer on the yield side, but we can you and I will have fun talks with people on the equipment strategy. So
yep, that'll be a good time. Take it out there. And also, Moving Iron Summit's going up here September 24th through 26th in Austin, Texas. If you're interested in more information about that, just go to Moving Iron Summit, and you can see the events page here on AgWeb. You can check that out and see what's going on there. Get signed up for that if you're a dealership, and check that out. Also, if you're a sponsor type person, you want to be a part of that and be in front of a lot of different dealerships. Folks, it's a great place to go check that out as well.
Now, folks, hey Casey, I gotta stop here because you're like the farmer I was talking about before. You're very humble. You don't want to brag on what you created, but Moving Iron, folks, if you don't know, man, what an awesome event! And if you're on the dealer side, the connections you're going to make, the value you're going to get out of these discussions and the connections, just you can't even put a number on it. It's just so valuable. So hats off to you, Casey, for what you've created. And what you started that, was that like 13 or 14 or something?
Yeah, 2013 was the first one, which was just a few of my friends in the same room, and it turned into this. Yeah, just flies by.
Well, it's an amazing event, and I can't recommend it enough, folks. Check it out, and hopefully to see you there in Austin.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Greg. So I'm looking forward to everybody coming together again for one more time and talking about capturing the marketplace. So, well, Greg, appreciate you being the podcast. We'll catch you again next week.
Sounds great, bud. See ya.
Thanks. Stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcasts after these messages.
Veltima fungicide outyields the competition by an average of 7 bushels per acre. But you've never been average. The only competition that really matters is you versus you. And with the performance of Veltima fungicide from BASF, you can take your best results even further. Beat your own record. Get every bushel you deserve. And make this your best season yet with Veltima fungicide from BASF. Always read and follow label directions.
Are you carefully managing fertilizer applications and budget, but still not achieving your yield goals? Micro 500 from AgroLiquid effectively addresses yield-limiting micronutrient deficiencies without the expense of additional applications, nutrient waste, or an unbearable mess. Micro 500's balanced combination of micronutrients is safe to apply and its compatibility is unmatched. Achieve your yield goals with Micro 500 from AgroLiquid. Find out more at agroliquid.com.
Hello, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. I got Rich Possum back on here to talk about what's happening in the economy. Rich, how you doing this morning?
Good, thank you.
Good, man. Talk a little bit about your podcast. Rich has a great podcast out there. Well worth your time to take a listen to. It's called Critical Point Podcast. And basically he's talking about all the stuff he's talking on here about, but way more in depth and way more clarity with a lot more examples of what he's doing. So Rich, talk a little bit about that, where they can find it.
Okay, they can go to criticalpointpod.com. It's a brand new website, and we have 3 subscriptions. One is Commodities by Rich Possum, which for the moment is just the grains. And then I have Stock Index Magi. That's the economy, gold, Bitcoin, crude oil, interest rates, bonds. But the primary focus is what's going on with the economy and the stock market. And then the third subscription is just a combination of those two. Probably 50% of my subscribers get both, and the rest are split equally between grains and the stock market. But go to criticalpointpod.com. It's got a new blog section, too, that I hope to get a better habit here of updating. I normally put out a little newsletter once a month also under that blog. But yeah, criticalpointpod.com. And basically, I'm using what I call business cycles. It's kind of an old terminology. Mine's far more modernized. And I'm basically starting with the attitude, the decade, every decade we have a bull market in the stock market like 100 to 400%. Then it comes down minus 20 to minus 50%. The economy grows during the bull market, so you get a boom period, and then you get a bust period of recession about 1 to 3 years once a decade. And I've got this clock-like model that helps us figure out when is those bad times coming and then when is the good times. And then I can break it all the way down to very short term where I tell people, is this an up day, down day, or is it up this month? I give them price targets, some alerts for some of those types of trends and signals. And then I can take it to very long term to super long term, which is kind of interesting. Over in the grains, we can get into super long term of climate, even of when is the next crop problem.
Okay. Well worth your time to check it out. There's also, he has a free version he puts out on wherever you can find podcasts. So still on Apple Podcasts, but just quick hitters, 5 to 7, maybe 8 minutes long, kind of give you an idea what's out there, and then you can kind of look at the subscription base from there. But, well, Rich got tons of good information out there that, quite frankly, I don't find anywhere else other than there. So, well worth the time to check it out. All right, Rich, let's jump in and talk about what's going on in the economy overall. You had the Consumer Index report this week, I think today, probably, right? Came out and talked a little bit about that. Obviously, the consumer index was down a little bit. I don't know if that was a big shocker to anybody, but I guess as you're looking at it, Rich, talk a little bit about what you see there and some of your actions out of the report.
So the consumer confidence index has been coming down for most of this year, and it was primarily just consumers worried with the future, where we're going with all the tariff Trumps, the whole Trump machine, in other words, because we are, whether you want to put it this way or not, burning down the government with the hopes of building a newer, better government and a cheaper run-back government. But the point is, people are unsure about everything because they got a big, big agenda with that 2025 project or into everything. Now, the interesting thing is this report this morning showed that last month, or actually this month, the consumer confidence spiked. It jumped quite a bit. But you can see we're still off for the year, and they've already, newswise, are saying all that is a sign of relief that consumers are saying, okay, it looks like Trump's calming down on these tariffs. He's getting a few deals done. Maybe we're not going to blow things up or have an end of world scenario. I don't have much faith to put in that in the sense of traction. I'm concerned the consumer confidence and consumer sentiment are 2 different readings, are going to stay on the low side, okay? And something that just dawned on me on the consumer sentiment, I did a study of looking at all the different presidents and the economic platforms and the policies going back decades. And what I found is that, and compared this to the rich, so we get this inequality, the rich versus middle class and poor, what I found is the consumer was really on board with President Reagan from the 80s all the way to 1999. As you can see, that even though there were big pullbacks where consumers were concerned, for the most part, it just kept going higher and higher and higher for a couple of decades. But boy, around 1999, it turned, it's gone down ever since. Now, there was a nice jump up for Obama's second term where people were actually happy and feeling like, hey, we've made it. And then a little bit of the Trump was actually added on and made them a little better. But then it was just right back down again. But overall, it's really just gone down since 2000. So really, it didn't matter whether it was Bush, Trump, Biden, Obama. It's basically the American people have kind of soured on this country ever since 2000. It's hit near record lows. Well, the interesting thing is, if you plot against that, how the rich are doing, right about the 1990s, right about that 1999, the rich started getting richer and richer, and the middle class were losing by some measurements. Well, the interesting thing is the sentiment gave up. So the middle class have done their best to support these economic policies since 1980 with President Reagan, the conservative, pro-capitalist, done their best to support it. They don't want to necessarily tax the rich. You can see they're getting discouraged. They're upset with the whole system. This is part of also the reason how Trump got elected, in the sense that even if they didn't particularly care for Trump, they voted for him anyways because they didn't like what everybody else is doing. Everybody wanted a big, big change. And we're getting that now. But at least it was fascinating to me to see that consumer sentiment behave that way. The American people really haven't been happy when we've actually had really good economies and done this ever since 2000. And you can just see it correlates with how well the rich are doing. I mean, the way I look at every new printed dollar, that's the rich and big business get 80 cents to the dollar, middle class get 20 cents, and maybe that's an over exaggeration, but you go back 50, 100 years, exact opposite. Middle class poor got 80 cents and the rich get 20. So this is some of the stress and tension in our country here, and you can see this even in consumer sentiment.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked a little bit about consumer sentiment, and you also talked about consumer loans and those kind of things. You talked a little bit about what you saw happening there. This is something we've seen probably last 2.5 years almost of escalating credit card debt and what that looks like and how that's putting pressure on the overall economy. We're starting to see that. This last report came out, showed that even more consumer debt was being compiled year over year, month over month, all those kind of things. So yes, as you look at that, Rich, that's got to be there's got to be a lot of people looking at that going like, how much more of this is actually there? Do we start seeing some major defaults and those kind of things start trickling their way down?
Yeah, there's no question. It's the business cycle is working just like it's worked every decade for the history of this country, and there's similar patterns even in Europe and around the world. It can go back 500 years, and you just see we're fascinating. We're so independent individuals and this and that, yet we still follow this process every day and every decade of how we run our economy. The consumer spending loans is like record high, and October, November 2024 had a big setback. That was seasonal. It was business cycle. It was time to come down, but the reason it came down what it did is also people cutting back just to see what the election was going to do. And then they started back in spending. But I have to use that now, and the models use it as an anchor point. It is suggesting they're probably going to continue to spend more right into next year. What's a little worrisome to me is that might be because things are going to get more expensive here with inflation. On the other hand, though, you could argue it probably is a sign the economy will hang in there a bit longer. And so they can still squeeze that credit. But to me, it's a writing on the wall that it's working throughout the decade. It's worked like the past decades. And we still have to be concerned towards the end of this decade, something's going to break. The machine's either going to break on its own, or we get high inflation, too hot of economy, and the Fed raises interest rates, which breaks the machine. Or it may actually be business and the bankers actually can do it. There's many ways of doing it. It can get quite complicated and sometimes simple. But there's no doubt we're on track of, once again, having too much debt, built the economy too good, too fast because of the debt. And we'll just repeat history again, and we'll have a recession, and then we'll pay off some of the debt or go bankrupt, one or the other combination. So it is working. The consumers, I'm not surprised at what the consumer has done. I kind of thought they would hold off. If you look at their sentiment, they're worried over Trump, worried where we're going. Same time, they're spending like there's no tomorrow. But, at the same time, I kind of feel like maybe some of this consumer spending is also telling us a message that maybe they don't have much choice. It's not so much fun money spending debt as much as they're just trying to take care of their lives. I mean, middle class and poor, there's no question about it. You don't have to know much math to figure out most of the money goes to the rich and the big businesses, and it does not circulate like it used to. President Eisenhower, a Republican, loved high tax rates, 70, 90% tax rate, because he said it got these businesses and rich people off their butts to go out and do something, make jobs, do business. How did it really work? Well, he was also giving them tremendous tax deductions. So in the end, they didn't have to pay it, but they had to get out there and work and spend and invest and do money. If they didn't want to do that, then they had to pay that high tax rate and live off whatever they had left. If they want to be lazy about it, they would do it. Fascinating story there. And it's interesting how some of these sociologists and social media people claim there's a lot of people want to go back and live like 1940s, 1950s. And I keep saying to myself, I wonder, do they realize 70, 90% tax rates back then? But it did work. It did work. I'm wondering, man, maybe we got to go back to that because we're not doing a very good job figuring out something new apparently here. But that's where I'm at with this consumer. They're doing basically what I would expect them to do. It's just it's a little more spending than what I thought. I thought they'd be a little bit careful. But again, I wonder if some of them aren't trapped, that they're not spending to have a good time necessarily. And maybe that's why the sentiment hasn't done so good. And that's a little scary again, that's a sign we're pushing it. And there's no doubt in my mind a recession's coming someday. And I think over here by no later than 2030. I had said it wouldn't be here before 2028. Now, the way things are going under Trump, unless something changes, I will allow 2027 the earliest. But I'm not saying it happens then. It may be 2028 to 2030. But yeah, on track of it. And it is a bit of a concern here. And some of this private debt is a bit of a concern here. So if you want, we'll then talk about the public debt and MMT and get into.
Well, let's talk about this real quick. So I'll just give you an example. So we went to one of the sandwich places, and got sandwiches one day after church, or coming home. We had someplace to go, kid thing or whatever. We rolled through that sandwich place, nothing fancy, like you're a Subway, Jimmy John's type of deal. And it was like $65 to get sandwiches for 5 people to roll through there, right? So I'm looking at this, and as you're talking about this, I'm looking at that going like, we roll through that. I got 2 pieces of bread, some meat, some cheese, a couple tomatoes, and some lettuce here. Each one of these things are like $15 a whack, right?
Yes.
So we roll through that. I'm thinking about this as from across the entire spectrum. If you're looking at just the sheer, even if the inflation thing goes down, it's not like prices are going to come down, right? They're not going to go back to be like, hey, we're going to go back to $8 sandwiches now. We were getting 15, now we're going to go back to $8 sandwiches or something like that.
Yeah.
As you look at this, Rich, walk me through, as far as, standard of living and cost of those, all that stuff out there, you're looking at $8, $9 a pound hamburger and $22 ribeye steaks at the grocery store. As you look at these kind of things, as you're looking at your models and from the economy standpoint, how much downward pressure do you see on the economy, even regardless of what happens with it, just because of pricing and where wages are coming into play?
Yeah, unless there's a significant increase in wages, I was optimistic here a couple of years ago we'd get to 3.5%, 4.5% inflation or GDP. As the decade developed, I also said we might see that high of inflation either towards the end. But boy, it's a difficult time now to see how we really get over 3% GDP. A few minutes ago, the Atlanta Fed come out with their GDP now, and they moved it from 2.4 to 2.2% for GDP. They had been minus first quarter GDP. I don't know if they've revised that or not. That's okay if it is still minus. These are annualized, and normally the economy does have a problem at the beginning of the year. It's seasonal and then recovers. But these are all limiting factors here where what's scary is, I've said it even on your show for years now, you normally have early inflation, and that's actually a few to several decades. And then you have a short period of time of late inflation where things are just getting more and more expensive, but you're not really getting anywhere. So nobody's winning. Right. And it almost feels like we're kind of trapped in a little bit of that late inflation, and we shouldn't be. So there's definitely some things different than what I've seen throughout the history of this country here, things are getting more and more expensive, but nobody's, at least the middle class, is not winning, and they're getting trapped. Yeah. I mean, how much more can you save for retirement and invest to help your life? And can you really afford that fancy vacation? Well, if you want to put debt on it, yes. But the day-to-day expenses, it's scary where we're at. And yet, I agree with you. You're unlikely going to get a bargain and get lower prices unless you have a recession. And I will say, in the U.S., we normally have disinflation or even deflation recessions. When it's deflation, you got to be nervous about having a depression. Some countries, you go into inflation and then hyperinflation. And we've had that somewhat, and we could get it. We normally call it stagflation, where things are getting more expensive, you're getting paid more, but you sit there saying, yeah, but I'm not getting any worse,
Right.
and we're getting a taste of that now. And Washington.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like now. It's like, I mean, everything costs more. People are still, keeping their head above water for the most part, but it's not like you're gaining on anything or losing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just. So my next question to you would be, if we get to this point where you see, all right, cool, they come out tomorrow and say, hey, everyone's going to get a 3% cost of living increase tomorrow. In the current situation that we're in, does that make inflationary spending worse or better? and where we're at, and if you need more money, obviously they're going to go out and spend more, right? So
30 years ago,
there's a problem.
So I would have said probably that'd be a good thing to help the middle class and poor. Unless we were in that late inflation, then that can actually be one of those causes. But today, that's what's scaring me. We're kind of in this late inflation. I'd be concerned doing that. So probably make things worse. But here's why: not necessarily the consumer pushing prices higher. It's the businesses know more about their consumers than ever. They really do. And I've seen some of the formulas you're using, and it is scary. They're designed to extract all the money from you they can possibly get. And what happens is they raise their prices, and then they look at it and say, well, we really didn't lose very many sales. We actually won on that. Well, then their formula says, well, you're not charging high enough. And then they're saying, well, we're being poor capitalists. We're not being good. We got to get more profits. So they raise the price again. Well, then their problem is, many years ago, is companies might do that. A certain bunch of them would do it last year. Some of them would do it this year. Some of them would do it next year. So it's broken up. And the consumer, it's kind of just snuck in on them, and they actually had some breathing room. It would actually work. Today, all these companies raise prices at the same time.
At the same time.
And another problem is there's a thing called the kitchen business cycle, where a company should make money for maybe 1 or 2 years, and then they ought to have 1 year that they either lose or at least they make very little. They get a setback. Well, then these companies are so wired. They are so worried about making money every single month, not the week. They're not letting these normal business cycles work. We're not getting that little breather along the way. It just keeps marching up all year long, more and more profits. The problem with the flaw with our capitalistic system is nobody's saying, well, wait a minute. Well, then they're possible raising these prices up. It looks very easy to us, meaning I guess we weren't charging enough to begin with. We got to get our fair share. Or is it also possible people need things to live on, okay? Right. And everybody's raising it, and sure, you're getting that money, but you then look at the middle class and, their profit margin, if you will, keeps going down, 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 down. And this is why we're hearing stories, people living paycheck to paycheck. It used to be the poor, now it's some of the middle class. It really is a scary thing. It's a sad thing because I love capitalism, but I got to tell you, the older I get, the more I'm going to be speaking against capitalism because this thing has got a real problem in this country at this time. And maybe we'll work our way out of it. I'm concerned, we need the big shock. All right, somebody can lead where they can change that system. And I'm not convinced we have it right now. Some of my friends think that's what we're doing right now. I'm not convinced of that, but we'll see. I'm willing to give it a chance. We're here. We got to give it a chance. But it bothers me that, there's some things are out of whack that gee whiz, it's going to make it tough. I mean, these younger generations, I used to say every generation whines and cries because they don't think they have it as good as their parents. But as they get older, they wind up just as good as their parents. I got to tell you, I feel sorry for some of the younger generations right now, okay? I can see where it's going to be difficult for you to get caught up. And I think some of this generation work I'm studying of other people here, it sounds like the millennials are going to be the ones that are going to lead here in the next 20 or 30 years. They would anyways just because of their age, but it sounds like they could be what's called the heroes, where they're going to make a difference. And the Gen Z is going to be right behind them. Those of you who are at the Gen Xers, they've been well known as pragmatic people, and that's nice, but I got a feeling it also means a little bit of stubbornness, and I got a feeling they might not help out as well as the millennials and the Gen Zers. And we kind of need them on board. I'm on the tail end of baby boomers, and the baby boomers, we're starting to see some of the hippie type attitude coming back because they're just saying, I've worked hard all my life and I don't think I really made it. What the heck? I should have been smoking the joint and I have my painted van and traveled the country. And some people are thinking that's going to be the next big move. Not really. It sounds like that won't be here to 2050s or 60s. And by then we baby boomers won't be around. So if you didn't like the whole hippy dippy, you don't have to worry. It's not going to take over, but it is fascinating. Some of it's coming back. And some of these older people just waking up, you know something, I worked hard, I voted, I helped make the system ever since Reagan or before, and you know what, I'm tired of the whole thing. Okay. And so I'm fascinated for the young people. I really think, even if I don't agree with Trump and stuff like that, he did a blessing in a way of burn the house down, and that makes everybody come out and get involved. And then we're going to build the house back.
Yeah.
And that's where, for you younger generations, more power to you. You know, I think we got to do it, because I'm also convinced if we don't do it right in the next 20, 30 years and have a pretty decent economy and feel happy about ourselves, we're an unhappy people. I've said it for years. We're mentally, physically ill. Now I'm shocked the number of people I'm seeing use that same phrase today. If we mess this up in the next 20, 30 years, we'll probably have the lost century. And Asia and China, they have... It shocked me just how fast they have turned the corner. I have friends that do business in China, and they're traveling China all the time. They come back saying, oh, we're so mad at them. They steal everything we got. They copy everything. I got to tell you, they don't need to do that anymore. They do not need to do that. And they're going to stomp us right into the ground into the next decade. And I don't mean this necessarily in a negative, bad way. And they're not going to run the world. And for the moment, the way the head of China talks, he's not interested in running the world. He doesn't think you should do that. Now, that may change in time, because prosperity does some bad things to people, how they think too. But, to me, if I could run the country, I'd say, listen, I know America likes to be the exceptionalist and believe we invent everything, but no more. We're going to copy too. We're going to steal too. What are the best things out there that make us happy and feel good about ourselves? And let's just do it. Give it a try. And in that way, we wind up competing with China, which actually, it's not a negative, bad thing who wins here, really. It's just if we can kind of stay on the same board here a little bit, it actually is better for the entire world. So I'm an optimist, next 20, 30 years, century. But I know, I see these things, this could be one of those countries 400 years ago that they were the greatest country in the world and then turned out to be a bunch of nobodies. And that could be us as well. All right, I kind of got off topic there. I'm not even sure where I was heading, but anyways.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, so you had Moody's come out a week or two ago and downgrade the overall,
and that
kind of downgrade the overall U.S. debt, and what that looks like down to triple B or whatever it is,
yeah,
or whatever that is.
Double A1 or something.
Well, yeah, there you go. Double A1, something like that. So I don't know how that means. And I hear about this all the time, and it doesn't seem like it does anything when they come out 6 months later, and
and that
AAA plus whatever, and it's kind of goes back and forth. Kind of like money printing, those kind of things. You talked about some of that kind of stuff. What you see there, as you're looking at,
and that
overall, public debt, and you look at these little kind of things, what do you see? How do you see that affecting the market?
So we're told there's $36 trillion in debt. And how our money printing system works is it's very similar to England's, like 400 years ago. You can even go back a few thousand years ago when the kingdoms invented money. And why did they invent money? It wasn't for bartering and doing normal business. It was the government realizing they couldn't barter with people. They didn't need just chickens and horses. They needed other things, and they didn't want to swap them and barter. So they simply said, we're going to force you to use what we call money, and we're going to tax you. We're going to bring back some of that money in order to make you use the money. And then this way we can buy the chickens and horses we need and go off and buy other things. And this is going to make a more efficient system. And it really worked well for them. But what that happened was they wound up leaving some money in the system, and people learned, you know what? This is a lot nicer than swapping chickens and horses. We can just swap money and actually buy what we need when we need it and that sort of thing. So the money thing just grabbed on to people saying, yeah, let's use money. And that's how the whole system worked about a few thousand years or so. And even in England, there was a king who borrowed today $2 million. And you know what? He never paid that off. It's worth probably $2 trillion today. If England ever paid it off, it'd cause an economic problem there. And the point is, they haven't paid it off 400 and some years. Why in the world would you pay it off now? So it's beautiful evidence that the money printing at the government, if you're going to show it as debt, it's a different kind of debt. And what it really is just money. It's not even a debt, in my opinion, but I can go back and forth and we can fight and argue, but it really doesn't matter. Because if you printed the money, we can show it shows up as printed money in your and my pockets. If it was debt at the government side, it converts to money and shows up in your and my pockets. So we've done the forensics and we've learned that $36 trillion that they call debt, and if it is debt, it's a different kind of debt, but if it is debt, it must have an asset, and that asset is money. It actually shows up at 36 trillion in our money supply that you and I are dealing with every day. And you can see how the economy grew right along with that money printing. So it really did grow the economy. Okay. Now, if you believe that it's just money printed and not the debt, again, you still find that 36 trillion anyways. Now, the beauty of being a government is even if it's debt or not debt, the government doesn't have to ever go broke because it can just print more money. You and I can't do that. But now, how this system works is the Treasury prints money and gives it to federal government. Now, Elon Musk just recently learned the money printing stations are actually in the federal government. Well, they're tied into the accounting and to the Treasury, really. But yeah, I don't doubt money has to start somewhere. So I don't doubt there's a station saying, oh, you need to spend some money here. Press this button. Boom. There's some money, right? But what does the government do when it prints that money? It spends it. Where's it goes? It goes in your and my pockets. Okay? Some of it's indirectly. We don't see it. We don't realize it. But it's working that way. Some does go out in the rest of the world, but that's actually over 50 years helped American business people actually do business more. And some of that money does circulate back eventually to us. But most of it is right there in your and my pockets, okay? Now, the Treasury also prints money, gives it Fed Reserve. Fed Reserve prints money, gives it to the bankers. Bankers print money on that money. Everybody's printing money but me. The bankers, okay, they convert it to debt. You and I borrow that, and that is real debt. You and I have to pay it back. The bankers even have real debt. They have to pay it back. They can go bankrupt. That can be a real problem. That's why we have financial crises. And what happened in 2008, 2009 was part of that, okay? But when you go back to the government side of things, they really can't go broke. They can just print, and they don't have to pay it off. It's owed to ourselves. They don't have to pay it off. It's. I know it sounds bizarre at first, but I've gone through years now studying this, and I finally have said, I'm onto this. I'm going with it. So it's called monetary or modern monetary theory. You can throw the theory out. It's been proven. And boy, the other side is really upset now, really trying to fight to prove the other way. And it doesn't matter. In a way, it's just kind of looking, do you start with the egg and go to the chicken, or do you start the chicken, go to the egg, and on forth? In the end, you can still realize this is not debt. And there's going to, and this is the problem today. The people want to believe it, even though they know they're having a difficult time now actually proving it. They're causing everyone to be stressed out and tense. If you and I have a lot of debt, like what we just discussed, people don't really have the money and they're spending more and more to just live. Then you look over the government spending money and you're thinking to yourself that you owe some of that, okay? Now you're really saying, boy, the whole world's screwed. This country is in bad shape, right? It really is making people meaner and nastier. So we need to kind of get over and not worry about that government debt because we got other things to worry about. It's making things worse. We're not thinking of it correctly. However, you can come back at me and say, now, wait a minute now. Even if it's not money or we don't have to pay it back, it's just government printing money, shouldn't we have something to say of how the government spends the money? Do we want a government that can just simply spend all it wants and never says anything? Granted, that's a whole different topic, and that's interesting how taxes work, because some people have figured this out now that maybe we don't have to pay taxes because that money, accounting-wise, just goes back into the government and is erased, gone, because they already printed it and spent it. It just loops back, and it's just accounting thing is all it is. So some people are saying, well, if that's what it is, why are we paying taxes, okay?
I like you through, Rich. I like it.
Yeah, well, it's a nice place to go. It's a little more complicated than that, I'm assuming, right at the moment. But the good news is that even if we can figure out how to do that, we also would want, it provides a reason for us to say, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Government. What are you doing? Because after all, even if you can prove this is not hurting us, the point is it's still our money, and it's government money, but we own the government. So it's our money. Can't we say what to spend on? And that's a different topic. And yes, we need to be able to assess what do we spend the money on? And the biggest question we can start asking is, not only of government, but also business, because business is now, in my opinion, just as bad as government. You have to ask, what value are you creating for the American people for spending that money? And we even need to ask that of businesses, even though they're even creating more stuff than government. And you can argue it's in line with their customers somewhat. But we need to ask this of everything in this country. What value does this create for us? And if we can kind of go that direction, we'll probably figure this government out and get it run more cost efficiently and effectively. But all I'm saying is on the MMT today side, you can just see some people really get nervous over this. It really bothers them when they should worry about the rest of the things in their life, So we just have to be careful where that debt is coming. It's a sad accounting feature that shows minus 36 trillion. Oh, that's a debt. But you just got to realize that nobody's showing you the other side of the balance sheet. There's a plus 36 trillion, and you and I have it. Okay. May not always feel that way. My brother said, well, where's my share of that 36 trillion? But it's buried in there because there's a lot more than 36 trillion floating. So that's how I look at things, and hopefully we're going to do that a little smarter and better. And it is interesting, both sides, Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, you could tell they're warming up to this. They don't know how to talk about it. The difference, as one famous MMTer over in England said, he says, it's kind of like a lens looking through something, and one person can see it a little bit different than the other, but you're really looking at the same system. And I think what he's getting at is, the Republicans today would say, okay, we printed this money and we want it to go to the rich because that's a better way of running it. That the middle class poor don't really know how to run a business, don't know where to spend it. So we're better keeping this business capitalist. We'll flow it through business first and back. Whereas Democrats or liberals or whoever else is on the other side, they'd probably say, no, rather flush that through the government or make some kind of direct payment, get it to the middle class and poor. And today, I must say, look at the inequality. I am concerned. I don't think we ought to be printing more money and giving it to rich. So how do we give it to middle class and poor? Because the way our system's designed, if you hand them a check, the businesses know it, they hike their prices, and then they get the check anyways. So how can we make sure it stays in the middle class and poor? So questions yet to be worked through.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's probably a good place to stop, Rich. Folks want to reach out if you can get more information about your podcast. Tell them where they can find that out real quick.
Go to criticalpointpod.com. And like I said, I got a blog. I got subscriptions. There's some free stuff on there. Just noodle around with it. Email me at rich@ag-financial.com. Questions, comments, ideas. Okay. And we'll go from there.
And you're on X at Rich_Posson, right?
Rich_Posson. I think I'm on Blue Sky. I think it's at Rich Posson. You don't use the underscore.
That'll work. Rich, appreciate you being on. We'll catch you again next time.
Thank you very much.
Stay tuned for more Moving On podcasts after these messages.
Imagine having more days of perfect weather, a combine that's more powerful, or even more soybean bushels per acre at harvest. With Revitec fungicide, you don't have to imagine that last one, because it's proven to deliver up to 9.5 more soybean bushels per acre than the competition. With results like that, it's easy to see why Revitec fungicide is the #1 recommended fungicide by soybean farmers. Visit Revitec.com and talk to your BASF retailer today. Always read and follow label directions.
It's time for a crop nutrition plan that gets more return from every drop. Starting with Pro Germinator from AgroLiquid, a complete phosphorus fertilizer product that includes nitrogen, potassium, and iron. More than 30 years of research shows that lower application rates of Pro Germinator often outperform other sources of fertilizer. With AgroLiquid's Pro Germinator, you can apply less and expect more. Find out more at agroliquid.com.
All right, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. I got Ryan Steen here from John Deere to talk about Operations Center and all the cool things that are going on with that. Ryan, how you doing today?
Casey, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Doing real good. Let's talk a little bit about you first. Introduce yourself and how long you've been with John Deere.
Yeah, Casey. So I've been with John Deere for just about 12 years now. Spent some time with different roles with our tractor and sprayer products. Lived out in central Nebraska for a few years supporting our great John Deere dealers in precision ag. And currently I work in our go-to-market space for the Operations Center. So spent a lot of time with Operations Center, JD Link, and really trying to help farmers out there, ag service providers, get the most out of the data that's available to them through that Operations Center tool.
Yep. Okay, so let's start a little bit of a history lesson here on data management, what that looks like. So basically we started out with what John Deere Office was first, and then you went to Apex, and then now here we are at the Operations Center. So I guess talk a little bit about the evolution of those products.
Yeah, so for that early history at JD Office and Apex, it was really a desktop software that was downloaded and installed on a computer, and your data lived in those platforms. And in the early 20 teens, we came out with John Deere Operations Center. So John Deere Operations Center exists as a web-based platform. The data is accessible from any device with an internet connection. So you can get on your laptop, log on to your Operations Center account, get access to your data, download Operations Center mobile on your cell phone. You can get all that data in a mobile app. So it's really opening up to see your data in real time, and then it also expands out to viewing your equipment and how it functions in real time. So if all the equipment that we've sold for the last decade plus has come with a, call it JD Link enabled. So it's basically a cell phone that's on the tractor, combine, sprayer, connects to the cloud system, and that allows the data to flow in, but also allows the real-time location to be available. That's the same thing can be put on your tender trucks and grain trucks. So now Operations Center has evolved into this kind of powerhouse logistics app. So you can see your equipment move throughout the year. You get the data to come in real time on your cell phone whenever you need it. That's been a great evolution of the tool. Probably another one, Casey, that's been really helpful for farmers as this tool's evolved to web-based is getting information into hands of people who you farm with. So that might be your agronomist, it might be an ag service provider, but that ability to transfer data back and forth, get access to look at data that can help someone give you advice has been great for our farmers, and making sure they're in that control of who gets to see their data and who gets to help them farm has been really important.
Yeah. Op Center it's a really cool tool, like you just talked about. I've seen everything from, the logistics side of it during harvest and during planting season, so those kind of things, getting, in larger operations, watching, assets move from one field to the other and trying to, conquer and divide here a little bit when when the weather's coming in and those kind of things, and watching how those assets move around makes a big difference in the operation as to how, one, efficient you are, and two, where do you really need your assets at to make things work?
Totally. And we know a lot of farmers have seasonal help that comes in, and every farm, if you go to their operations center, probably has a North 80 or the South 40, and nobody knows what that farm means except for the folks who are farming in there. So to be able to pull it up on an app, see where the equipment's at, maybe even get driving directions to that equipment, it just streamlines communication and helps people kind of get the things done when we really need to be working hard during those busy seasons like harvest, spraying, and planting.
Yep. And that's the one thing too about the field labeling and how important that is inside Ops Center, because all that information is now tied directly back to that circle or to that field or to whatever it is that you're doing. And that information comes across. And I think, it's, again, going back, you look at some bigger operations, those kind of things, and smaller operations where they might have 3 or 4 or 5 circles or 3 or 4 or 5 fields they're working. Everybody knows what those are, right? And they all have some kind of unique name. It's not just 1, 2, 3, 4. There's always something, in there that's uniquely about that. But that information gets tied back to that field.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. So let's talk a little bit let's walk through the processes, right? So you have 4 different passes a year that you're going to make on in any given farming operation. You're going to have a tillage pass, a seed bed prep type of thing. You're going to have a planting pass, application pass, and then you're going to have a harvest pass, and maybe another tillage pass in the fall. But as you're looking through those things, walk me through how I'm getting that information in there to get me ready for, the ultimate outcome of did my yield increase or decrease, or what happened during my farming year.
Yeah. So when we think about those passes and walking through the year, it's important to have that holistic data set, because we get to the end of the year, we all think about my yield. My yield's my scorecard. You kind of jump to that as the end game, but without knowing the history of what happened in each of those previous passes, it can get kind of hard to know, why did I get the outcome I got? Did I want to experiment with a different seed variety, a different tillage pass? Maybe I tried another herbicide mix or an additional pass at some point, or tried fungicide on a certain field or a certain subset of a field. So getting those documented and telling that story becomes really important to knowing the outcome in harvest. So when we talk to farmers and you want to get into data, I think the first spot is setting up I'd encourage you to go out to operationscenter.deere.com. it's a completely free tool to use. I think that's an important thing
Yeah.
from a data side. There's not a cost associated to it. So when you're setting up your equipment, making sure that documentation is enabled and that you're actually documenting as you're going through the field becomes a important spot, especially in tillage. You'll start with that one, that when that switch is engaged, when you lower that tillage tool into the ground, that we're documenting. And where that becomes important, especially if you're documenting your tillage depth, we can start to see, did we break up hard pan where we wanted to? Did we drive? Maybe you had some of those spots on the headlands where the semis always park at. Are we seeing a good return on that tillage pass there? And just starting our foundation with good seed bed prep. What kind of job did we do? And also document what tool it was done with. So if it was maybe it was a deep ripping tool, maybe it was just field cultivator as we're doing seed bed prep. But you've got that historic record. As we move into the planting portion, this can be an area where we can do it a little more power into the data and analysis side. So in Operations Center, you can go into the setup portion and into products, and this allows you to add all of your seed varieties and actually get them labeled ahead of time. So that way, again, that's a big decision point when it comes to yield, and a big purchase decision point at harvest is, what do I want to do this next year? How did my varieties perform? This actually allows us to know where I put a variety at. And then when we get to harvest, we'll talk about analyzing yield by variety. But then putting those varieties in, we try to make this as easy as possible. Because I know the first time, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about data for the first time, it can seem overwhelming.
Yeah.
But if we go into setup, we add those products in, we can actually build out a work plan. And a work plan allows you to, hey, I want to put this field, I want to put these seed varieties, I want to have these auto track lines, send it. And that's automatically going to populate on the tractor when you get into the field. It's going to preload your boundary, preload your guidance lines. It's going to give you the right products, your seeds to choose from. So now I can just go and I just plant. And I'm not worried about, at the end of the field, trying to finger in each of the individual products. I did that stuff in February or in December. I just don't have to worry about that in April and May.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's laying us a great foundation. We go execute the planning job. We know where we've got our seeds at. We can have the prescriptions sent there from our agronomists if we're farming with prescriptions. If we're changing our seed varieties, all of that stuff can be done through Operations Center and through those folks that you farm with as well.
Yep.
We get into application, kind of the same thing as well. We're adding our products in, we're adding our tank mixes in. It's a great chance also, if you work with an ag service provider, to get that data brought in. That's one of those sharing elements where, hey, you can get that same data. If they're, it's applied with a John Deere sprayer, they likely have it documented. It's going to pull seamlessly in. It's probably a good spot, Casey, that even if it's not John Deere equipment, Operations Center can work with your non-John Deere displays. Most of the major manufacturers, it's listed in Operations Center in our help files, what's all accepted, but almost every major manufacturer is compatible. So it's important to get that good view no matter what you farm with.
Yep. And I think the cool thing too about Op Center is that our Operations Center is that it gives everything from the perspective of what you did along the way, right? How much horsepower you used, how much gallons of fuel you used during those operational periods. If you're using a sprayer and you have a weather station on there, it tells you what the weather, what the situation was at the time. So you can go back and document, did it work good? Did it not work good? Did I spray when it was too windy? Did I push the envelope a little too much, or did I what was too humid? What was the situation that was out there doing those things? And I think as you look at that, again, it comes back to what we're getting ready to go into next, is the harvest side of that, is that all that data now sets the stage for, did I win or did I lose, right? And that's really what it comes into.
And we know we like to get that planting window to that side in maybe a 5 to 10 day spot, but Mother Nature doesn't always cooperate, and you might have some that you planted in the middle of April, and the wrong weather hits. Some of those fields might get planted in the 1st of May. And just having that scorecard to go back, this not just in this harvest, but year over year, and know, what did I do in that year? What was that outcome? Same thing for spraying, happens all the time, that I got my herbicide down really good right when I wanted to. It rained for a few days. I couldn't get out to the field. I sprayed this one a bit later. Did I notice a weed problem? Can I go back and look at my spray records? All of those things, just to have super robust data for year over year, is really, really important.
Yep. And I think too, when you're looking at the amount of information that you can share, right? And you can share that with whoever you want to share it with, right? I can pick a litany of people and just get that stuff to go to them. But the thing about that is I don't have to wait till like the old jump drive days. I don't have to wait till the end of the season and then give somebody a bunch of jump drives and make them, figure out what's going on. They're getting that stuff real time, and they can see, you can look at the actual monitor while you're in the cab of, somebody else can view what's going on in that monitor and help you make the adjustments that you need to make to push those things through. So the capabilities of the system is,
to be available.
It's all, it's just all encompassing, right? I don't know how else to put it. It's, it's just one of those things where you can see everything that's going on and make every decision in real time and not have to wait. Okay, we did all this stuff. Now let's see what happened. And now we take back and go and try to, corrugate this data somehow and make it all work. And then you can actually see it going live. And I think that's the cool part about Operations Center.
Yeah, and I just think through something I ran into recently in planting, Casey, just to that point of, there was an issue with the planter. Some of the row units were just a little bit off, and we actually caught that in real time with someone else who wasn't necessarily the person who's operating all the time in the tractor, didn't see it, was caught on Operations Center Mobile because we could see what was going on with that machine in real time. We're able to get out, make the adjustments. There's a few bearings need to replace, and we're back planting, and we're performing the way we should. So instead of, that case, there was about an hour where we maybe weren't planting perfect, where before it might be a day, 2 days, a week where things aren't quite right, and that starts to add up as you get throughout that planting season and the impacts to our yield.
Yep. All right, let's talk a little about harvest data and the stuff that comes from there. So I remember, going back 20 years where you're just, the different colored charts that come out from yield data and those kind of things. And that was pretty much it, what you had. Now you have multiple layers of data that you can stack onto that harvest data, starting all the way, like you got about all the passes that you did, all the AB lines that you put in there, all the situations you went through, your watering prescriptions, fertilization prescriptions, all those different things that are in there. You see all that data now. So now you're coming back into looking at yield data, and it over the years, it's the hot spots that you would see in those maps are starting to kind of level themselves out a little bit, where there's still hot spots and those kind of things, but it's not, a giant batch of red next to a giant batch of green over here, right? So they've kind of leveled themselves out to you're seeing a lot more yellow across those maps. Operations Center gives you that visibility. So talk a little bit about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the tools we've come out with in the last year or two has been Work Analyzer. Mm-hmm. And if you go into Operations Center, go into Analyze and go to Work Analyzer, this takes you out of the field view and kind of puts you at the top level view to look across your entire farm and break it down by your fields. You can break it down by varieties and break down by equipment. Those are kind of the three big categories we can start slicing the data through. So if I wanted to look at my 2024 harvest, I want to look at how my corn did, I can put those filters on, and it's going to give me a list of all the fields that I had corn in. And right away, I can look at my moisture, my dry yield. I get some of these very high level numbers come through. So if I just want to start going field by field, I might want to pick on either my highest yield field to see, like, what did I do in this field that I just crushed it? Or I want to pick on my bottom field and say, like, why is this one not pulling the weight? It gives you just a great starting point to look at. Because if you click into those and go a layer deeper, it will show you, well, hey, on the North 80, your best field, you actually planted these varieties. Okay, well, I can do that same thing, Casey, in Work Analyzer, go click on varieties and be like, I want to see all the fields that had these top performing varieties. And is this a field thing or is it a variety thing? And I can see, as a farmer now, we're trying to get away from the analysis paralysis of all this data and, hey, here's a few good spots to start looking at. And then we can take you from there into field by field. So now you can start getting into those, call those field maps, and click back through, like, okay, did I do something different in? If it's not a variety thing, is it a calendar thing? If it's not a calendar thing, did I do something different in that field from a herbicide pass or from a fungicide pass? Like, what did I do different there? But we want to give those first few hitters of total field performance, variety performance, and then you can drill down and actually look at those subsequent passes that happen, or not subsequent, but those previous passes that happen in the field.
Yep. And it goes back to, again, you talk about like soil analysis and those kind of things, like what kind of soil are you planting into? Again, you can log all that stuff inside Operations Center, and it just gives you that baseline of this. I planted this into this kind of soil, and I got this, and this was what I did, and I did something different over here. And like you said, you can go back and compare that data to where you can see all the finer points of what you did or didn't do right.
Yeah, and if you're looking at, say it's this last harvest be 2024, maybe if I'm on an every other year rotation, I want to go look at 2022. Like, was it the same layout the last time this field was in corn, or was it different? Or if I'm on a corn rotation year before, what happened? You can really start to look at it. Do I have some things where I just have, and this always happens, some of the fields are just better. They just perform better, but we can start to filter that noise out and use the real data to ultimately drive your decisions on what you do the next year, and maybe what practices you'd consider adopting, or which ones maybe aren't pulling their weight.
Yep. So one other cool thing about Operations Center is that the machine analyzer that comes in there.
Yeah.
So not only do you get to take your field data that you have everything, you also get to take your machine data and put in there. So you look at how many hours you're at idle, how many hours you're at work, what percentage of horsepower are you using. You start looking at your sprayers, how much road time did you have on that sprayer versus spray time versus hour time, engine hour time. You start taking all these different things into consideration. It starts laying the groundwork for, do I have enough horsepower? Do I have too much horsepower?
Yeah.
Do I need an extra sprayer, an extra combine? You start looking at all these different, indicators out there that show what's going on. I guess talk a little bit about that and how you see people using that.
Yeah, so I think the things we talked through this point, Casey, we're thinking about return on investment and a lot of agronomic conversations. Just great way to get your data in. We were looking at machine performance, but it's kind of that return on investment from your agronomic practices. The same thing holds true on equipment. We want to make sure that the investment that our customers make, especially in John Deere equipment, is paying them a dividend, that they're seeing that, hey, I'm getting what I paid for when I bought John Deere equipment. Something we've recently brought into Operations Center is the ability to make sure you're maintaining your historic view on all your equipment. So if what happens a lot of times is you might get a new combine, but I want to look and see exactly how I performed on the old one. So what we've done is kind of have the ability to stack those right next to each other. So if you had, maybe you run a S780 combine before and I was running an S670 previously, I can stack those up, and am I getting better throughput? Am I covering more acres in a day? And that's in that work analyzer portion, is giving you that real specific, this is what that machine is doing for getting acres covered, getting corn brought through the combine, and the same things that you talk through. We find all the time, we call operational inefficiency. My combine's sitting grain tank full, not unloading, not harvesting.
Right.
And when we're breaking it down to that level, and that's kind of the worst case scenario for a combine is, I got a full grain tank, I'm not harvesting, I'm not unloading, I'm waiting on a truck. That's the code for that one.
Yep.
But just even opening that door up of, if you had another truck, you could keep this combine moving a bit more. There's a big flashlight to shine on the harvest job for a farmer, and it comes down to, we're analyzing what's happening on the equipment and trying to surface those insights for farmers every day.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's from the dealership perspective, I used to spend time with my customers and going through that and like, let's take a look at what you did. And then, you talk about specific specs, like how many hours did you use Combine Advisor, for example, right? On your combine, how many hours did you use See and Spray? How many hours did you go through all those different specs? It lets you know, you paid all this money for this. Let's make sure you're using it. And are you utilizing it? And did it make a difference in your operation?
Totally. Even basic things like, if I'm using auto track, do I have it engaged? Am I using it? It lets you look, especially if you have, multiple folks who are operating equipment throughout the year. If you're not always the one who has that's in the seat, being able to see what other people have been doing in your equipment and making sure that that's driving the return and the job quality you want is very, very important.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of times where I use an example where, you see a tractor and it had 1,000 hours on it, for example. And this particular example I'm thinking of in my head right now, there was 1,000 hours on it and 400 of them were at work. The other 600 hours are at idle. So I asked that question, it could have been a number of things, right? It could have, the PTO was engaged and we were, running an auger or something like that. But this one was just sitting there with no PTO engaged. So I'm like, what was, did you mean for this to happen? And it was basically, it was just idle. They would jump in and out of it all day, and they would go use it, jumping in and out. And during harvest and during planting season. And next thing you know, you had 600 hours of it that just sat there at idle. And the bad thing about that is those 600 hours cost the same as the 400 hours that you actually used it.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part about something like that. So
definitely,
sure.
It's not always even just the fuel consumption side of it at idle. It's that depreciation on equipment and what it's actually cost you for sure.
One of the real cool things about Operations Center too is that it does have a mobile function to it, so you can use your cell phone when you're out there, use their app, and go through there and get the same functionality that you would see on your desktop. So let's talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, I think Operations Center Mobile, especially in the last few years, there's very few things that you can do on the desktop function or the web-based browser area that you can't just do in Operations Center Mobile, especially when the season gets going. I don't know a lot of farmers who spend a whole lot of time sitting at the computer looking at their farm, but everybody has a phone. Everybody can get it out and take a look at what's going on in the farm and during the season. So everything that we've talked through today is accessible on the mobile app, even down to adding your products, developing a work plan, sending it to equipment. All of that can just happen from Operations Center Mobile. So if there's one thing, if maybe you've used data before, even if you hadn't, Operations Center Mobile is again one of those free things that's incredibly powerful. We talked a little bit about logistics too. So even if you have seasonal help who's coming out to the farm, maybe they're not familiar with your farm operation, where fields are at, this is a tool that if I know what field I want to go to, or even get to the combine, I can go on the phone, touch the combine, hit directions, and it will pop up Apple or Google Map directions to that combine. So regardless of how much experience you have or your help has, or maybe it's somebody else on the farm, maybe you just want to get lunch brought out to you during the middle of the day, it can provide that level of detail, and you can grant access to your farm to folks to be able to get even just that basic location and field type information if that's pivotal to you getting the job done.
Yeah, for sure. Well, definitely Operations Center has so many different functionalities and so many different tools that you can put towards the gaining those efficiencies on the farm that everyone's looking for. And it's again, it's free. So there's no reason not to use it.
And the Operations Center Mobile area we talked through, and one of the things at the front end was putting JD Link connectivity on vehicles that we wouldn't normally think about it. So maybe it's your pickup truck, your grain trunk, a tender vehicle. That's been really powerful on just location information, knowing where things are at. Even there's put alerts on those vehicles. So if you don't want somebody driving 80 miles an hour in your farm pickup truck, you can have an alert program to ping you when that happens. It's a really powerful tool for a farmer to sit back and really have control and view of their entire farm, and everything that's on the farm is represented in Operations Center, and becomes a very powerful tool when that happens.
Very much so. All right, Ryan. Well, if folks want to get more information about Operations Center, what's the easiest place to do that at?
Yeah, I'd go to, first off, operationscenter.deere.com is the site for it. You can create an account for free. Check it out. There's great help files on that. So if you're navigating through it, just dive into the tool. It's the best way to learn it and get experience. On YouTube, we have on our John Deere YouTube page, there's a full series of videos that walk through the functions of Operations Center and provide fantastic how-to information. So anything that we've talked about today I guarantee you'll find it in that John Deere YouTube portion in the playlist for Operations Center, and can walk through the details and help you get set up and running with Operations Center. And the last thing is probably the most important one is reach out to your local John Deere dealer. We got great experts at our dealer network that are excited about the tool, are excited to help you engage with it, and get the most out of your John Deere or just all of your equipment and your farm.
Right on. Well, Ryan, appreciate you being on the podcast. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it, Casey. It's fun.
Right on. Stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcast after these messages.
Veltima fungicide outyields the competition by an average of 7 bushels per acre. But you've never been average. The only competition that really matters is you versus you. And with the performance of Veltima fungicide from BASF, you can take your best results even further. Beat your own record. Get every bushel you deserve. And make this your best season yet with Veltima fungicide from BASF. Always read and follow label directions.
Are you carefully managing fertilizer applications and budget, but still not achieving your yield goals? Micro 500 from AgroLiquid effectively addresses yield-limiting micronutrient deficiencies without the expense of additional applications, nutrient waste, or an unbearable mess. Micro 500's balanced combination of micronutrients is safe to apply and its compatibility is unmatched. Achieve your yield goals with Micro 500 from AgroLiquid. Find out more at agroliquid.com.
Hello and welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. You got Aaron Finley back to talk about what's going on in the world of equipment here this morning.
I am terrific, seeing as how it has kind of like Seattle around here. Not that I like rain. I'm very solar powered, but I do have a hobby that requires some rain to accomplish the task. So
in the world that we live
Water
in,
will run in 25 after all.
Yeah, you need this one rain like this to come through, and you'll make hay.
When it rains like 3 inches over a week, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, a weekend. That's really
yeah.
I think we're getting close to 4 inches of rain here because it's we've got about what is it, Thursday?
I beat the rain home Friday night. Friday night at 6:30 is when that big storm blew through.
Yep, it's rained every day. It's rained all day, every day since then. So
and it rained a little bit Thursday night and a little bit Tuesday night, and it actually rained like a 3/4 inch the week before. So
Yep. And here we are on Memorial Day Monday, and it's Monday morning, and it's raining.
There we have it.
And then, it'll shut off, and it'll be the rain that we get for the next. I feel like I feel like it's rained more in the last 24 hours than the last 18 months.
It has.
I think we have to stop raining because
if we got 4 inches, it's damn sure more than we've gotten in a year.
Yeah.
Maybe not 18, but in a year for sure.
Yeah, it's been nice to go out here. It's always dry here. I always joke with people like that, but I go when you're telling people that when you live in a place where it's dry, and you're saying like it's pretty dry out here.
Right.
It's pretty dry. So it's been a blessing here to get this kind of rain to come through, especially with where the majority of the crops we planted, and some of it's starting to emerge already. So you got this nice easy rain. It's good.
And it keeps some of the dirt where it belongs, for a while here, because my God, February till it started raining, every day was 40 mile an hour. Every day was a brown sky.
Yeah. Working our way through that. Feels good to see some puddles in the street out there.
It really does.
All right, man. Let's talk a little bit about. I think one thing we need to talk a little bit about here is just some better technology, and where we've seen things start to progress and move. So, if you look at where, go back in time, 15 years, and the flex head's kind of always been around there. It's you've seen a lot of flex heads come and go, but technology has been with the flex head that has kind of gone away and gone through its progression to where we're at today is really been very cool to watch how that technology works. The rigid head still has a place. There's still plenty of rigid heads out there, but you see a lot more folks that will run a flex head lock and not have a rigid head than you do the other way around. So you're starting to see some of that take place. The thing about headers too is that you're looking at flex head technology get into corn heads. You're seeing a lot of different things take place with the corn head, where you're starting to see some different stuff out there to where that technology is there. But I think it's worth some time talking about what the market looks like for those pieces of equipment and how that is how those things are kind of setting up what the future might look like. So,
right.
Let's just talk a little bit about. So you got the auger flex head, and you have the draper flex head, and then you've got hinge flex heads, you've got multi-point flex head. I mean, all these different pieces of technology that come into play. when you're looking at these, Aaron, do you see one of the different types of flex heads? Do you see one that's a better option than the other? Because they're all priced different. I mean, you have
Right.
a base level all the way up to the most expensive stuff out there. But I guess what I'm asking you is, do you see one machine out there, one head out there that, the juice is worth the squeeze more than the other one?
I would say, as far as talking drapers, probably the hottest head in draper land right now, or platforms in general, would be the hinge draper. Now, the beauty of that is it's only, there's only so many. They've only made it, for so many years. You go back to flex drapers, now we're on the green side. We're all the way back to 600 series, 630 FD, 635 FD. The new series of heads, not the sevens really had no impact other than just your, stair stepping down as far as affecting the sixes at the bottom. But with the RDHD series, that has really shoved them 600s way down low.
Yeah.
To your point, even an entry level guy now gets to choose, do I get a flex draper or a rigid draper? Because we got a lot more wheat and milo than we do beans, but I really need the flex for beans. He now has that opportunity because the 600 flex drapers have got shoved way down in the market. Okay. The other thing, the pockets of the world for the story I just shared, a rigid draper, a flex draper, outside of the high plains, off into the Pacific Northwest, and a little bit in the far Southwest where they do some real heavy wheat, irrigated wheat down in there. The rigid draper really doesn't exist anywhere else.
Right.
To the point where certain, companies make limited runs a year for the last handful of years just because, why are guys still buying this? It's almost like they're the ones saying that, like, we have this. Well, this is twice of what this is, and I don't need all that stuff wearing out. The biggest thing that I remember seeing, say, in the last 15 years, from flex drapers showing up on the green side, and I'll even go 10 years older, the oldest of the McDonald, gosh dang, what was that? I can almost remember the number, but it said Harvest Header on the side. It was the last ones that had the black metal side shield. But they're 962 Harvest
962, yeah.
Those things are 20 years old. That was the first flex draper. And then somebody came out and said hinges don't flex, and then you got that kind of business, and maybe they handed out yardsticks. I don't know. But you saw those come on hot and heavy. But you saw them everywhere, hot and heavy, but not necessarily adapted right away. One guy gets them, 5 guys get them, 10 guys, then they start blowing up, right? But you go back to the deer, we are a dealership that does a lot just because of where we're at. We're kind of in the middle of the harvest run. We do a lot of custom harvester business. And that was always my first thing. Those were the guys who would not buy the flex draper, or they bought 2 heads. Even on the used side, obviously a new guy, the programs and whatnot make that a whole different ball game. But for the harvester that buys Big Hammer's used stuff, even that guy, he was the one that surprised me first, because I'm like, why don't you get a flex draper? You cut all these beans once you're done with wheat. Like, that's how you spend October, November, and December is chasing all these beans. He goes, because then I'm going to wear one head out 3 times faster than wearing 2 heads out. And I'm like, okay, makes sense. Like I get it. He goes, plus, I don't want that fancy one banging up and down the highway all summer long. Okay. Well, that was a very popular opinion for about 5 years. Now it's almost all flex draper. Yeah. Other than you do have some guys, maybe a more budget crew that is running, they might still be running straight honeybees, straight McDonald's. They got an off, not red, not green combine, something a little different. But when you saw those guys go to the flex draper, that dramatically changed that rigid draper overnight in the marketplace. And it made it, they're still, at least, in the High Plains here, they're still a very desirable head. They are not, it used to be, no kidding, you get in say during the 700 series, you got in a 640D, just D. You could almost look at your phone and make it ring, yeah. Because the farmers were getting their headers.
Yep.
The guy that I don't want that $100,000 head. I want 3 $30,000 heads because I want everything specific and dialed in for what I want, and we go grab it and go. And that had a big impact on the market too. And then you fast forward that all to now, and without question, the number one header is that HD.
Mm-hmm.
You have the other impact to that is the combines that HD was built for.
Right.
Those didn't exist 10 years ago.
Right.
They barely existed 5 years ago, regardless of brand.
Right.
So now you got 8800s and X9s and AF11s and what's that other thing? CR11?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you got machines that you got to feed. And what the problem I see starting someday is more of those high plane specific problems that we love out here.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you buy a 40 that hinges? We don't even have to take that off to move fields. And then the guy from Central Ohio calls, do you have any hinge 25 footers? What?
Yeah.
You know?
That's dynamics and acreage.
Right. Yeah. And now they make the same header. It's almost like we're back to the FD versus the D, only it's RD versus HD. They're both F, but do I have bridges and trees? Do I not? Do I have to drive through traffic? Do I not?
Yeah. So I think another thing too, when you look at the thing, so let's move over to corn heads. Corn heads. The folding corn head.
Finally.
Folding corn head's been in Europe for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Folding corn head for a long, long time.
I can remember being at Husker Harvest Days in 1988, 89, and Geringhoff had a chopping, folding 12-row corn head there.
So they've been around for a long time. I don't really ever remember seeing one until probably in commercial use anyway, right? Until probably 7 years ago, 8 years, 6 years ago, somewhere in there. Was when I really saw
late teens. Yeah.
Really saw them come to the marketplace. And I always preface everything to the cell phone. So the cell phone to me was, when I first got my first cell phone, this is the dumbest thing on the planet. For about 10,000 years, no one had a cell phone, and the world, seemed to go just fine. If you broke down someplace, you went to the farmer's house and asked to use your phone, and you called somebody and they came and helped you, right? And that was pretty much status quo. Now, if you leave without your cell phone, you're gonna, no matter how far away you are, you're gonna turn around and come back, get your cell phone, and go with you. Right? So Same thing with the folding corn head thing. When that first came out, I was like, yeah, I mean, I can see where that would be nice because it's going to save you a lot of time unhooking and hooking up, and if you have to, when you transport heads and those kind of things, it's field. And but I always kept going back to, like, I've had it in Europe forever, because in Europe, right, they're significantly more narrow than they are in the United States, and they do have some regulations about, farm equipment, and everything has to be within the frame of the machine when you're going. Stuff like they do, well, it's really never going to catch on, because, or really, you can have a 24 reel head and scoop, 3/4 of it over into the ditch, and it's still not going to hit anything.
Right.
The car should go by, and it's going to be just fine. That being said, fast forward 5 or 6 years, and you're seeing a lot more folding corn heads, for the very simple fact of going down the road. It's a safety thing for the guy for driving. Also, I don't have the most experienced combine driver on the planet, so if they can fold that thing up, and as long as they don't hit the duals on the bridge coming across the thing, they're not going to mess up the corn.
Right.
I think there's some of that kind of going into the play there. Now, that being said,
switching fields.
Yeah, a lot of time. A lot of time. And nobody thinks about that until you actually start using it. And you're like, oh, it's so simple.
Right.
I didn't realize how much time it took to unhook a corn head and put it on the trailer, drive the trailer down the road, feel it going. Save, by doing it. So now, as you start watching that progression now, you're starting to see more and more folding corn heads. And I would rank a folding corn head in the exact same place I would rank powerful bins on the combine. Nobody really thought about how much unfolding and folding the bin extensions on the combine until you didn't have to do it anymore. You just hit the button and they came down, and the amount of time and the efficiency that it saved. Now, the price of a folding corn head compared to that of a regular corn head is significantly different.
Correct.
But as you watch the progression of how things are working, you're seeing more and more folding corn heads come into existence.
Right.
Now, I still think the jury's out. Is the juice worth the squeeze on folding corn head? Are you really getting back the difference in, is the depreciation value of a folding corn head the same as a rigid corn head, right? And I think some of that, I don't want to say that it's not existent, because there is a depreciation scale there, but again, it all comes back to the secondary market and the tertiary market, where you're looking at, there's the new one, there's a 1-year-old one, or 2-year-old one, or 3-year-old one that's out there.
How far is enough?
Yeah, like what's enticing enough for that used buyer to come in and say, okay, cool, I'm willing to pay that for this, and this is where I can be at. And I think we're seeing a lot of that pressure across the board, whether we're talking common, whatever it is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that is the secret of the entire market right now, whether we're talking push mowers or Class 11 combines.
Yeah, so when you're looking at the used marketplace, that's like, where does that next buyer come into play? And you got to figure where that's at. So I think, as I'm watching this, especially in the corn head side, because you get a new corn head, man, you're $100,000 for the corn head.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, if it's a folding corn head, you might be $250. I mean, that's like, $250,000 to buy a corn head.
Yeah.
So
that's right. It goes on $1 million combine.
That's true. But so now you start looking at these comments and these heads, even truck stripper. I mean, they're $50,000 for one of these things, So I start having a conversation of, okay, so where's that second buyer come into play? Where's that third buyer come into play? And I think we start looking at heads. To me, I'm looking at it from the perspective of, it's not I'm trading combine heads every year with my combines. It's like, I'm not trading combines every year. I'm going to keep my combine heads and run them for 2 or 3 seasons.
Right.
And because you have to, you start looking at how the trade values look at, and how you're looking at the depreciation, kind of things. And I think some of that too is going to start bleeding over into the combine tractor world, where you got to extend out that process and what that looks like.
Well, and from a dealer standpoint, as weird as this is to say, it's easier to get rid of his one combine than both heads that come with it.
So I think the thing about a head that's different.
To think that it's easier to sell that one 550 item than those two 125s.
Yeah. So the thing about that, the head thing is,
the next guy doesn't need heads. He just needs a combine.
And this head that he has works on the combine he's buying.
Right.
And that's the thing about the head issue, right? We always judge combine market inventory, the health of it. Okay, if I had 15 combines in inventory, I probably had between 30 and 35 heads in them.
Right.
Some kind of platform head, some kind of corn head. Right? So you had those two things for every combine. Well, when I started getting out of whack, I wasn't someone, obviously combines are probably were concerned about, but when you started looking at, my ratio is no longer 2-to-1 heads, right?
Right.
It's 3-to-1, or it's 2.5-to-1, or it's even if it got below 2-to-1, you still kind of like, I don't have enough heads for the combines I'm selling, because typically when someone came in to buy a combine, a lot of the time they would look at that combine and say, okay, cool, I'm gonna buy the combine and one of these, either a corn head or a platform head of some sort, right? And I'm gonna trade in, I still got a good corn head, I'm good with that, so I'm gonna I'm gonna trade in the platform head, or I'm gonna trade in the corn head, or whatever it may be. So we started getting that ratio started getting out of whack. Like you might start looking at, I got a lot more platform heads than I have combines for them to go on.
Right? Yep.
Or vice versa, right? So you started watching those things transpire. Today's marketplace is, you're looking at, I'm going to run my combine head until I might run for 5 seasons or 6 seasons or something like that before I do it. And some of the guys I do like earlobes and those kind of things with choppers when they're looking at corn heads. There's a lot of guys there that are looking at that from the perspective of, I don't need to trade my corn head until I can't find an adapter to fit on my chopper anymore for that particular model. So,
like, odds are, if you're doing earlage, if it's turning, it's going to rip the ear off. You're good. Go.
You're good. Exactly. So
your super plates can look however the hell they want. Just go.
Yeah. Right. So you start looking at how those things work. So as I look at the evolution of the head, as you look through where we're headed at now, these things are getting bigger. They're getting to be a lot more technology. And you start looking at flexing corn.
Right.
That's a whole other level of corn, right? And folding. Right? So you got this whole new animal out there that is going to, again, a flex corn head is going to be something that's going to be used in a very specialized situation. Right? You got a lot of terraces and
right.
a lot of things out there. Like, you're not going to, I don't know too many guys out where we're at that's going to go out and make sure we're flexing corn head.
Right.
But it's going to be one of those things that the further east you go in smaller fields that have a lot more hills and terraces and those kind of things, you see a lot more.
Eastern Corn Belt, for sure.
If you're digging into where's the market at for corn heads, to me, I look at it and I'm saying you should be prepared to have a customer that's going to run a corn head at least 3 years moving forward. You start looking at, you start watching things move through.
And that's a good break for those guys too.
Sure.
3 years, because odds are, if he's got a boatload of acres, he's got more than one machine too.
Yep. And one thing too about the corn heads and the moving and the wear part associated with those, you're coming up you've seen a lot of manufacturers come up with a more, they can handle a lot more abrasive conditions for longer based on the wear parts and how they build those wear parts. Right? So
corn heads are almost like a planner as far as jobber slap-on pieces.
Sure, yeah.
Man, there's just, here's an attachment for a corn head. Here's an attachment for a corn head. Here's one.
Yeah. And even from stock rolls and technology and stock rolls, right? I mean, the difference in stock rolls are, if you want a chopping like corn head, but not a straight up, stock master style chopping corn head, there's stock rolls out there to do that for you. It's like you can start looking at these things as they roll through. It's almost like the market's setting up a corn head to be the duration of the trade cycle to be longer, it feels like sometimes.
Yeah. You know, on the dealer side of things too, it's almost flabbergasting that headers, for no more than they do, but they have the thing you don't realize, they live an awful, awful life. They really do.
Yeah.
Nothing lot rots faster than a head. Except a
draper head. Yeah.
Right, yeah, especially a draper. At his place, it's in the shed, it's under a tree, whatever. It's not sitting out for God and everybody to see it and bake the belt to death, you know.
Right.
So you have some of that. It's on a cornhead, you could go pick 8,000 acres and unhook it on the lot, and there's 3 gearboxes out for some reason. Like, how does that even happen? You know?
Yeah.
This guy just won the national corn picking bee, and now we have the head and it's half. It doesn't work. Like, where did that happen? So that's a big impact too. Everything lot rots. I love talking about it, but even that combine that has so many switches and cameras and wires and all that stuff, regardless of color, that thing, for whatever reason, can sit out there all winter long and just take it. But the corn head right next to it that has one wire on it, and it's to run the flashers, everything's mechanical. You go hook up and, the right side isn't working. Awesome. Good things.
There's a lot of it is amazing how fast corn head. You know, I think too, I used to love the old 93 series.
Oh, yeah.
Corn heads, how you could always tell how long they set outside because they would go from, John Deere green to mint green,
Only a couple of years. Guys would call and be like, "Is that a blue one?" Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that was always, you could always tell those machines.
I used to love that. We'd get in an 893 or something and blast it out to everybody and be like, in big bold letters, "Not a blue one."
yeah, that was always fun to watch. Those things come in, and you're right, exactly right. People would make that distinction.
Have you guys had that head a while? No? Sure is blue.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of technology in corn heads, a lot of things to pay attention to, and I think that's why when you're looking at, if you have any piece of advice on this, if you're looking at your overall spectrum of how corn heads fit into your operation, just take a hard look at what your sample looks like on the trade side. Take a hard look at what reconditioning points I think play a bigger role in front end equipment than I think anything else. If you look at platform heads, you look at corn heads, there's sometimes you can spend as much as you want to on a corn head. It's a pretty impressive money that you can recondition a corn head. And draper heads, again, the belt's probably the most expensive thing out there. The roll is very expensive. Those kind of things. But then just taking a look at those things and where those come into play, what the market looks like, and you can do a pretty easy jump on any listing site and look at platform heads and look at corn heads and how many they're out there, and then look at how many combines are out there, and you can tell pretty quick where your head's going to fall into play. So,
right.
Always we kind of have that conversation with you. When's the right time for me to trade heads? But probably a good place to stop. People want to reach out to you, Aaron, and get more information on what you're doing. What's the easiest way to do that?
I'm on all the social medias. Well, not all of them. I'm on Facebook and Twitter by my name. Shoot me an email, afintel@21equip.com, or you can call me or text me, 308-760-1193.
Right on. Casey Seymour, you can find me on Facebook, X, Instagram at Moving On LLC, LinkedIn at Moving On Podcast. You can also go to TikTok at Moving On Podcast, and you can check this podcast out on Farm Journal's YouTube page, also on if you want to listen to the audio version. Special thanks to all the people who have been a part of this. For coming on, Greg Peterson for coming on, as well as Richard Austin for coming on. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour. Let's move some other folks. Out.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.